Cast. And now a forum with representatives of the FBI and Muslim and Arab groups on the UK terrorist plot. The Muslim Public Affairs Council hosts this event. It's about half an hour.
Everybody's okay? We can go ahead and get started? All right. Well, thank you very much for coming to this very important and very ad hoc press conference on behalf of the Arab and American Muslim communities. And we have invited today the Assistant Director in charge of the Washington Field Office of the FBI, Joe Persichini, Jr., who has agreed to join us to articulate on behalf of the Bureau some of the projects that we have been working on together in partnership in defense of our homeland. Very quickly, let me begin. My name is Ahmed Younis. I'm the National Director of the Muslim Public Affairs Council. And first and foremost, we'd like to express our relief that this alleged terror plot aboard airliners sourced in the United Kingdom, aimed for our homeland, has been foiled. And we'd like to also express our gratitude to the Muslim community of Britain, which has worked diligently with law enforcement to be able to tip them off to a series of unreasonable or unusual activity that led the law enforcement agencies of the United Kingdom to be able to foil this plot. We will take this opportunity, as we do all opportunities, to once again unequivocally condemn any and all violence against innocents and against civilians in the name of our religion, and in the name of the tradition of our Prophet, peace be upon him. And we say it for two reasons. Number one, because we stand in stiff opposition to any and all groups that would attempt to wage a war of terrorism or would attempt to wage criminal activity against our nation and against the civilians of our nation, but also because we are fighting for the integrity of our religion, ensuring that we are able to wrestle from the hands of extremists the dignity and the orientation of the Word of God and of the faith of 1.2 billion people around this world. Very quickly, let me talk about one of the programs that we work on, and that is the National Grassroots Campaign to Fight Terrorism. That is an effort conducted by the majority of the mosques in the United States to ensure that they are doing three things. Number one, amplifying Islam's message from the tradition of the Prophet and from the Quran, amplifying Islam's message against terrorism and extremism within religious discourse. Number two, and probably most importantly, instituting mosque guidelines that ensure, for example, that mosques are financially transparent to their congregations, that mosques are in control over the inter-mosque environments that ebb and flow in their nature on a day-to-day basis. And number three, to ensure that there is a place within the broader community for the mosque and for the Muslim community that congregates there, and ensuring that there is a law enforcement presence, a public and open partnership, a law enforcement presence that is articulated through town hall forums and meetings with Muslim leadership, so that the Muslim community can know who is protecting them, and so law enforcement can know how they can protect the Muslim community and how they can lead us to be able to look for those nefarious activities or look for those saboteurs within our midst that would potentially be attempting to either plan an act of terrorism or to radicalize young Muslim youth. So we take this opportunity to re-articulate that we as American Muslims and as Arab Americans are at the forefront of the war on terrorism here at home, and we are the missing link in our ability to fight a war of hearts and minds that ensures that young people are not so disenfranchised that they would move towards terrorism as a means of recourse. And now, very quickly, I'd like to introduce Assistant Director in charge of the Washington Field Office of the FBI, Joe Persichini.
Thank you, Ahmed. I'd like to first thank Ahmed and my colleagues here. This is a display of leadership. This is a display of bravery. If we take a moment and think back what happened yesterday, how a terrorist attack was stopped in its tracks. Homegrown, lone wolf, relationships and partnerships as we have here is the way we're going to stop that in this country. The leadership that these individuals have displayed in joining with us, joining with the FBI, the men and women of the Washington field office, and the men and women in the families that they represent. This is a sign of solidarity. We have so much to do. And this group was formed on September 11th, not yesterday, not last year, but this group was formed almost 5 years ago. And we have been in dialogue since that time. We have made so many advances. We don't always agree, but we meet, we discuss, we go over the points. We may not always be able to provide them all the facts, but they understand. We now interact with the mosques, and some of our goals right now are not just with the leadership. We as the FBI, we must meet the youth and the young of all of our communities. We're working together on some youth programs where we can go into the mosques and put out the word and hopefully use our new junior special agent program out in the mosques, interact with all the youth in the mosques. This is so important for us. Today is an important day to stay here and to stand here with these people who have an investment in our nation. They are a force to be reckoned with. They have such power behind them. And that power, coupled with all of us together, will strengthen this nation as best as we possibly can. We can't do what we do without the faith and trust of the people we serve. And that's our goal. When we formed this group almost 5 years ago, we developed our mission, our goals. We developed this pamphlet. It states what we hope to do, what we hope to accomplish, and what we're willing to do in the community. And it memorializes what we do. And we follow that every day. Yesterday, after it was made known about the terrorist attack or the attempted terrorist attack, we all got on a conference call. And we all talked about what happened. And we wanted to do a temperature check of the community. Are we doing the right thing? Are we interacting? Is there anything that we can do? Again, I stress, we in law enforcement, whoever all of our agencies are, we can't do it without the public's help. And this is help that is just unbelievable for us at the FBI. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mohamed Magid, M-O-H-A-M-E-D, and Magid is spelled M-A-G-I-D. I'm the Executive Director of All Dallas Area Muslim Society, as well the Imam of that mosque. I've been part of this advisory group with the field office for a while, and I can tell you that this relationship with the field office has been very beneficial for our community. We have invited them to come to our mosque for town hall meetings, and they have responded. They interacted directly with the grassroots, with the members of the mosque and members of the community in many occasions. And I would like to emphasize that as Muslim, as an Imam, I believe our responsibility of protecting this nation, our nation, it is one of the things that Islam, the religion of Islam, teaches every single Muslim to do. As Islam prohibits taking life of innocent people, as is stated in the Holy Quran and the Old Testament, whoever take a life of innocent person as if have taken the life of all humanity. What we are doing today is to emphasize in the importance of Muslim community being in partnership with the law enforcement, fighting together terrorism, fighting together extremism, and provide an environment of safety and security in this land. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laila al-Qatami, and I am the Communications Director for the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. How's that? ADC is a nonpartisan, non-sectarian, grassroots civil rights organization with chapters across the nation and members of all faiths, backgrounds, and ethnicities. We want to thank our fellow advocacy organizations and the FBI Washington field office for coming together for this press conference. We believe we speak for the Arab American community as well as all Americans, when we condemn in the strongest possible terms the terror plot that was thwarted yesterday. We also reiterate our condemnation of the use of terror and violence against innocent civilians. Additionally, we commend law enforcement for its role in stopping this heinous act. We are very proud of our continuing work with the Washington Field Office, and we work to build bridges with the Arab, Muslim, and we work to build bridges through the advisory group that Joe mentioned, which is the Arab, Muslim, and Sikh Advisory Committee. We will continue to work with the appropriate federal agencies as we work to keep our country safe and to protect our communities. The FBI has noted that this assistance is vital in the efforts to keep our country safe. At a time when 4 out of 10 Americans feel prejudice towards Muslims, ADC also stresses that the entire ethnic and religious communities should not be held responsible for the actions of individuals. We also hope that any backlash or hate crimes that might be provoked by yesterday's arrests will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. ADC is also mindful of the damaging effects that language used by public officials and the media, such as Islamofascists, contribute to hostility to anyone who's actually perceived to be Arab or Muslim. We believe it's important to note also, as everyone else has noted, that the tip leading to the arrest came from members of the British Muslim community. We commend British and U.S. authorities on their cooperation in averting this tragedy through diligent police work, investigation, and intelligence, as opposed to racial profiling. This is an excellent example of how investigations into terrorism can be conducted successfully and carried out by law enforcement, and the role that the community can also play. Thank you.
I would also like to introduce those who are with us. Nidal Ibrahim, Executive Director of the Arab American Institute, and Arsalan Iftikhar, National Legal Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations. What we would like to do now very quickly is take any questions that you might have, and I think we have about 10 minutes to do so. So, questions?
For Mr. Persichini, please. Tom Gisto with ABC. Wanted to ask you a little bit about profiling. What is the Bureau's policy on profiling, and do limits on profiling make your job harder and the public less safe?
First of all our agents will operate under the law, and profiling is not allowed. In many of these investigations that are so sensitive, that's why we seek the cooperation of these individuals. We follow leads, we conduct investigations, but as I stated in the very beginning, we do not engage in profiling.
Does it make your job harder? Does it make the public less safe because you can't profile?
No.
Yeah, just to add on to that, racial profiling doesn't work, and that's why law enforcement doesn't use it. It's not about political correctness, it's just about its utility as a law enforcement tool. Please.
You know, yesterday when the president was asked...
I'm sorry, if you can just introduce yourself and the...
Nadia Bilbesi with Al-Arabiya Television. You know, yesterday when the president was asked about his reaction to the terror plot, he used the word Islamic fascist. And as you know, it created an outcry in the Arab world from Pakistan to here. Yes, they condemn it. You just mentioned it, Laila just mentioned it. But do you, as a Muslim organizations, want to use, we want to ban the word because of obvious reasons that discriminate against all Muslims, and because of the reasons that you mentioned, that these people do not really represent Islam?
Sure. Number one, we don't want to ban any word. We believe that everyone should be able to use whatever words they'd like to use. But we would caution the president about using the term Islamic fascist or Islamic fascism because, number one, there is nothing Islamic about these criminals' fascism. And number two, it disenfranchises the majority, the vast majority of Muslim moderates who are placed to be able to fight extremism within Muslim communities. And when we talk about those who articulate their criminal activity within the name of Islam, we say that we can fight bad theology with good theology. So it is Islam that will fight these terrorists, and it is the integrity of our religion that will prove itself at the end of the day to not in any way be sanctioning this kind of terrorism. So yes, we caution the president against the use of that term. Imam Magid, would you like to?
Can I just ask a follow-up there? I'd be curious, my name is Zain Verji, I'm with CNN, for Mr. Persichini to also comment on that. The president used the term Islamofascism. What is it that you think Islam and fascism have to do with each other? What is your perspective?
I'll go back to the grassroots of investigation. There isn't an individual up here regardless of what words you're doing to describe someone, we know what harms our community. And I'm not going to get involved in describing one way or the other. We have sit for many, many years and talk about how we take care of our community. If you understand and you hear someone that is espousing what should be negative to our community, we're going to respond to it. So I won't comment on.
Do you think it has a negative effect, though, that it makes your job more difficult?
What's more important is our relationship and our dialogue here. We don't get into definitions. We get into reality, we get into questions, we get into situations. So I'm not going to involve myself with what a description or a relationship as far as describers are of one way or the other. It's more important for us to have a free flow exchange of information and ideas.
Hi, Stephen Cheetah with ABC7 here. Mr. Persichini, how could you characterize the success you've had in winning cooperation of the FBI in the Muslim community, and are you receiving the same kind of tips that they received over in England?
Well, success, number one, I'm here. That's important. Success is us meeting constantly. Success is that anybody here in this leadership who has a question can call me anytime, night or day. That's success. We always need to build further on success. Yes, we have their cooperation. Yes, we work together. Yes, we receive information. So to me, it's all positive. It isn't the end. It is still the beginning. Every day, I believe we must build. As I talked about with the youth, we must interact with the youth as we do in the district with our other programs and other minority groups that we deal with. We have to have a positive impact on the youth of our community because we don't want that first interaction to be negative.
But you are receiving tips.
Yes, very positive.
Okay.
And if I can say from a community perspective, what the Washington Field Office has done since 9/11 and in coming with us today is really unprecedented. And American Muslims across the country are extremely appreciative of the ability of the Washington Field Office to engage in a partnership of equals with the Muslim and Arab communities to ensure that we secure our nation and that we counter the influence of those who would want to engage in hate crimes. So from our perspective, this is unprecedented. And Mr. Persichini's leadership and the leadership of others at the Washington Field Office has really led to a new era of engagement and interaction between American Muslims, Arab Americans, and law enforcement agencies across the country. This is a model to be followed by all stretches of the imagination. Yes. In the back.
Hi, Beverly Lumpkin, CBS. There's more cooperation here in Washington than in other areas? Any other areas? More than Detroit or New York or?
From what we can gauge, there is a bit more cooperation here. There is a bit more engagement. The engagement is more concretized, as you saw in the pamphlet, as you saw in a number of different programs that we have. Surely American Muslim institutions and leaders across the country and Arab Americans are working to build relationships with law enforcement. And many of the mosques across the country didn't need 9/11. To be able to build a relationship with the local FBI office or with local law enforcement agencies. But yes, as national Muslim leaders, what we see at the Washington Field Office is a model to be followed and is not something that we have come across in any of the other regions of the country.
If I may just, however, there's a very successful program up in Michigan that has been going on for a number of years now. That's the Bridges program, and it's an interaction between Arab Americans and Muslim Americans in the FBI, and that's been a very good working relationship, also in cooperation with the U.S. Attorney's Office there.
This is for Mr. Persichini. I'm Terry Frieden with CNN. Tell me, there have been, yesterday I believe it was, the FBI officials said there had been something in the order of a couple hundred FBI agents following up leads and so forth around the country, and I wonder if you can tell us if that's continuing, to what extent, and how you're approaching this community with as much detail or specificity as you can as you follow up those leads without causing difficulties.
Well, as you know, because of a continuing investigation that I can't comment on the specifics, but the relationship between us and MI5 and the Brits and the cooperation we have is at the highest possible level. The exchange of information and intelligence is constant. So we have people in country working with them. And again, that isn't just with the representatives of the UK. This problem is global. So all law enforcement has an unbelievable cooperative spirit today. So yesterday, yes, there was mention of many of the agents, and we're providing any assistance that we can, hopefully, of course, gaining intelligence to make sure that we're doing everything possible to protect the people of this country.
Reels from Channel 9. There are reports, as I'm sure you're well aware, that there are approximately 5 other members of the London cell still being hunted. Can you confirm that? If so, what is the status of that information? Do you have their names? Do you have their IDs? And if so, does the local community assist you in identifying them?
Well, I'm not going to comment again on the investigation, any other individuals that believed to be still wanted. But as far as the local community and the local law enforcement, we've been through that so many times, and I can't say how proud we are as a local law enforcement at the federal, state, and local level. I think you saw Chief Ramsey yesterday at a press conference talk about what we're doing together collectively as a law enforcement agency. That's a must. We have to do that. And now to expand on that, of course, is the development of the people of the community. So again, this is just another display of, I think, that all of us and all law enforcement have gained the respect that we are true partners.
I have a question, if it's okay, for anyone in the Muslim community here. The latest terrorist plots have involved Muslim men. What's your position on why there shouldn't be more screening of young Muslim men at airports or elsewhere where the government feels that there's a need? Why not?
Number one, because it won't work. Profiling young Muslim men in an airport is no different than profiling young black men driving nice cars in middle suburbia America. That kind of profiling simply does not work. Number two,
How do you know that it just doesn't work?
because it's very well known within public discourse. General Ashcroft was against racial profiling. Mr. Gonzalez is against racial profiling. It's been very clearly articulated within the United States, at least, that law enforcement agencies that engage in racial profiling will not yield a higher result for their efforts than if they do not engage in racial profiling. Number two, when we profile a community, we render a whole class of a population subject to a very intrusive series of engagements by law enforcement. And when we do that, we are further disenfranchising those very same young people of the very same class, of the very same neighborhoods, of the very same communities that we want to be bringing into the pluralism and into the fabric of all of these societies. So here's what we don't want. What we don't want is young Muslims that do not trust law enforcement, young Muslims that do not trust their governments in the West, young Muslims that feel that there is a disproportionate impact upon them when law enforcement is attempting to fight terrorism. Why? Because we believe it is those young Muslims that are going to be able to lead law enforcement, to be able to fight terrorism in a way that makes sense.
What would you say to Americans who may feel nervous seeing a group of young Muslim men boarding a plane? I mean, is that, do you think, an irrational response?
Sure.
I think it's irrational response, and you think so too, because I would not see my daughter or my children being stopped at the airport, says, you look Muslim, therefore can you stop for a minute, let us make sure you are not a terrorist. This is not the way that we really want this to be, because we would like to have the youth to integrate in America. Youth, we would like them to work for FBI, to work for law enforcement, we would like them to become part of the mainstream America. Therefore, having them to be the suspect rather than the partner in this, we're going to isolate the youth, and it will be counterproductive. And the other things I would like to say that we've been hearing from the law enforcement, especially from the field office, They do investigate what, not who. Because it is the activity that make a person become suspect, not his color, not his race, not his gender. And therefore, it will be very troubling if somebody believes that young people in America they have to be profiled.
Okay, we're going to take one more question of the young lady that is sitting next to the gentleman with his hand up. Yes?
It was very similar to the
okay, then we'll go ahead and take your question.
But I was wondering, I mean, going back to the prejudices in the American public, President Bush's words, a lot of groups are concerned that his words are going to deepen the prejudice that all terrorists are Muslims. So how do you guys, I mean, are you doing any public education campaigns to counter those prejudices?
Yeah, not only are we doing that, but we are articulating directly to the president and to the administration that we feel that that is counterproductive terminology. Islamophobia, which is something that we are worrying about today as a result of these bombings. Islamophobia is really counterproductive counterterrorism. They are counterterrorism measures that place a whole community at the barrel of suspicion. Whereas what we are attempting to do is to single out or to exclude from the mainstream those individuals that have an ideology that would make them prone to engaging in violence. So we have a clear line of communication with the White House, as we do with the FBI and all of the other federal agencies, and we have articulated to the president's staffers that we don't believe that that was the best use of terminology, and we believe that the White House will act in accordance and will agree with us that we need to call a spade a spade. But when we call it more than that, we are putting a whole community at risk, and that certainly is not in the best interest of our nation, and that is not in the best interest of any innocent civilian population around the world. So finally we say, we fight terrorism because it is against the fundamentals of our religion. We fight terrorism on behalf of our nation. We also fight for the integrity of the Constitution that defines who we are as a nation and who we are as an American people. And certainly racial profiling and that type of activity does not support our efforts to support America. Thank you all very much for coming, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Excuse me.
Do a one-on-one with them?
Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney today on C-SPAN's Road to the White House.